All right. Iowa State, highest ranked team among the Big 12 North Pod, with, of course, finding a way to win. And they gave up an enormous amount of yards on the ground to UCF, but they found a way to win. You know what? You got to win the games. Win the games. They did. They have the off week coming up. And, Matt Campbell and his Cyclones are in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, each week this team gets more Matt Campbell-y, and that was the case, against UCF. They had really no business winning that game for stretches of it, especially given how much they were giving up on the ground. But Rocco Becht was absolutely fantastic, passing, running, doing everything he could to get the team back in the game. And the difference between a team like UCF and a team like Iowa State is when faced with that scenario, Iowa State wins it. They close, they win it. Yeah, their defense was the worst it's been all year, and it didn't matter, which shows that there's something special about this team. Now, their schedule down the stretch it's varying degrees of tough, obviously, and then ending with Farmageddon is going to be really, really tough. But I don't see, this team getting phased all that much
they
as
gave
they go
up
through the schedule.
354 yards
and still won.
Yeah,
still won.
9.1 yards per carry.
They beat a team that's known for letting leads slip away.
Yeah.
That's become Gus Malzahn's trademark in some ways, and that's why UCF fans are approaching West Virginia fans' level of fed up, feeling fed up. So that was an awful loss for UCF. I applaud the effort and most of the game plan, but the closing, how many games have they lost that were winnable games in the last couple of years? Because I think of this one immediately, I think of Baylor last year. That was an abysmal loss that they had no business losing that game. But, yeah, Iowa State's got a good defense, except against the run. And that was very evident. They have some work to do in that regard, and they are very lucky they've got a seasoned quarterback who's playing with a lot of confidence and playing really good football, and they've got great targets like Jalen Noel to help, in a time of need, because they were up against it. They looked like they were going to take their first loss, but they were given a little bit of an opening, and, Becht engineered some points there late. So, it's all about just winning the football games and moving on to the next one, and Iowa State was able to do that. I think there are some lessons to be learned. I think there are concerns to be had, especially about defending the run. Not necessarily are you going to see anybody who's quite the level of UCF as far as the running game goes, but you can't let anybody run for 354 yards. That's insane. And to win that game, you're counting your lucky stars if you're Iowa State that you got away with one there, and that would have been especially bad at home. To turn around after the way you were feeling going into this and then to drop a big disappointment game, kind of like what BYU's expecting to maybe happen this week, except for Iowa State was at home. That letdown, they overcame and survived the letdown, if you will, and walked away with a signature win that is going to propel them increasingly into the big picture conversation. But they get their last little breather here and giddy up for the home stretch. But love what they have at quarterback, love some of the playmakers they have, but they've got to get better in certain elements on defense.
They have Tech at home, at KU, and maybe KU starting to turn a corner. We're about to talk about them. Cincinnati at home, at Utah.
Running team.
The last game against Kansas State, which is a team that can do both, but they are known as well for what they have with the running backs and Avery Johnson. Kansas State and KU, both in the Big 12 North Pod. Both are playing each other, both coming off wins. Let's start with the highest-ranked team here, and it's K-State and also Chris Kleiman.
Oh, they're just a nose ahead of Kansas, aren't they? That's one of the things I thought about this game early in the year was the winner of this game is going to set themselves up to be in the Big 12 title game, because I thought that Kansas was going to be really good. Kansas has not been really good. They haven't held leads. Now they did throttle Houston last week. This is a different animal. So, if K-State loses this one, they're probably on on the outs when it comes to the Big 12 title game and their chances to get in that, because they're going to be clawing back in it with 2 conference losses, and that's going to be tough considering there's 2 undefeated teams that would have to lose a couple of times, one of whom
they would absolutely
beat
need
you.
Iowa State to lose and then beat them at the end of the year.
Exactly. So you need a lot to happen there. I expect this game to probably be better than most would expect if you just looked at the records, because of the rivalry and because Kansas is, as bad teams go, they're one of the better bad teams, because it's not like they're getting blown out every week, but they're still not good, and they still keep losing games. And I like what I've seen from Kansas State the last couple of weeks when it comes to winning when the run gets stopped.
Craig, I'll say one thing, and then you could lead into it. I've said I set this up, and you guys go after it. But Kansas State has just won games at Colorado and at West Virginia, and they hammered the Mountaineers, who might be on empty. But that's nice to win. I don't care who you're playing, back-to-back road games.
Yeah, I mean, I agree somewhat. I think we need to take some of the Tabasco off playing in Morgantown for the time being, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that
I agree.
I think going and winning on the road anytime is something impressive or something to celebrate, because it's just, hey, it's not your place. To go into somebody else's place and win's a big deal, but this ain't your mama's Morgantown.
No.
So I'm not quite as impressed by that as I might be otherwise, especially because Iowa State just did it the week before. So West Virginia, when we get around to them, you talk about 2 golden opportunities right there for Neil Brown, and you understand why the talk is the way that it is right now after the last couple of weeks. But for Kansas State, Avery Johnson, really good once again throwing the football. Didn't have to run in this game, but this was a tight one at halftime. And they just opened it up in the second half and just blew the doors off of West Virginia, took advantage of Garrett Green turnovers, and he's just, my God, not playing the level of football that y'all remember when everybody was, not everybody, y'all remember when a little segment of people were like, Garrett Green's getting disrespected, he's the best quarterback in the Big 12, and I know some of that might have been trolling, but there was actually some people that believed that or believed that could be the case, and that has definitely not been the case. That's part of the reason why West Virginia is disappointing. But Avery Johnson, on the other hand, was very much highly lauded in the offseason, had a couple stumbles the BYU game, but since BYU, he's been great. And I said it the night that it happened, and I maintained that was one of the best things that could have happened to him, was going through that BYU experience, because nothing's going to compare to that for him the rest of this way, unless they're like in the semifinal of a playoff game or something, and even then it won't be a crowd like that. So I think that, yeah, it hurt them in terms of their ranking and, being perfect and all that, but I think that game actually did them a world of good. Now you've gone into Morgantown, you get a win that you were expected to get, but you just never know in a conference like this. Evidence being BYU and Iowa State this past weekend. Yep. So you went to enemy territory against a team that's desperate to win, against a coach that was desperate to win, and you flexed on him, and you did it without breaking too much of a sweat, especially there in the second half. So I think Kansas State's sitting pretty. I think they're obviously highly favored for a reason heading into the Sunflower Showdown. But like John Kurtz said, and like you say with any rivalry game, like you never know. No. Like you got to be ready to play. So we'll see if they're ready against the Jayhawks.
And then there is West Virginia. Man, I get an email almost weekly from not just Bobby down in Myrtle Beach or S. Michael DeHart or Chad or anyone else. They have.
Did we talk about Kansas?
Not
really.
Yeah,
I thought you were. I thought we did, but no. Let's stop. Put the brakes on, and great win for them. They needed a win, and they boat raced Houston.
Yeah, I mean that was really encouraging. Granted, it's Houston, so there's kind of that caveat, but I thought that they did exactly what they needed to go and do. You go and beat a team that you should be better than, that you should go and beat, especially playing your home game. And so they wasted little time, and Jalen Daniels looked really good. You mentioned the name Kobe Bryant earlier. He was sensational as well. So first Big 12 win, second win on the season, and maybe a little bit of confidence, and we'll see how they perform this week against their hated rival. But I think Jalen Daniels has quietly had a pretty good season in some cases. Like, I know there was the early stumbling blocks, but I think the last couple of outings he's actually showing some signs of improvement. Not like player of the year level, but certainly a lot better than when he was knocking the rust off earlier in the year. So I think that's a feel-good win for KU. You can't celebrate it too much because of who it was against, but you played good football, and that hasn't been the case necessarily all year. And you went and grabbed the final score and you ran with it, and you didn't leave there be any doubts.
Yep.
You're going to lose another close game. You didn't even let it approach that territory. So you did what you needed to do against UH.
No, and Jalen Daniels was really good. And as you mentioned, Kobe Bryant winning the Nagurski Award, 3 picks in that game. They have the ability, and you look at some teams that started flat, and you look at their schedule and how it might open up, that some might be able to get on a 2 to 3 game run to try to put themselves in position to be bowl eligible. And those same teams have no wiggle room whatsoever.
The thing about them is they got off to that terrible start, but the 2 toughest teams they've played are maybe the second and third weeks. Illinois on the road, who's pretty good, and UNLV.
Yep.
So that's how they started off after that Lindenwood win. But they've got K-State on the road, Iowa State at home, BYU on the road,
Jesus,
Colorado at home, and then at Baylor.
Maybe the 4 best teams in the conference, if it all, based on attrition, et cetera. Good Lord, I did not know that's the stretch. West Virginia, well, listen, they're struggling. They're 3-4, lost to K-State, got blown out at home. Now they go on the road at Arizona, at Cincinnati, who's obviously a fun team to kind of watch, or at least a grinder. Then they have Baylor, UCF, and they finish at Texas Tech. But let's talk about, for right now, Neil Brown. They are 3-4 and back-to-back road games, and maybe they need to get the hell out of Morgantown.
Maybe they do. That was really, really bad.
They lost combined games to Iowa State, K-State, top 20 teams, 73-34.
Yeah, they're and then throw that Penn State game in there earlier in the year, and they're getting blown out by the plus team. So getting on the road against Arizona, another team that's struggling like you are, is pretty good. But again, they've got to get right in a hurry, because they've got to go to Cincinnati, which is no slouch after the bye. They've got Baylor coming up if they're on the way up, and they end the season at Tech, which I don't think is going to be easy for anybody at that point in the year, especially if Tech rebounds after this last week and still sees itself within shouting distance of the title game. So they've got to get busy. To steal the line from Shawshank, they got to get busy living or get busy dying if you're West Virginia, because right now they like Oklahoma State and some others are in an absolute free fall. And if they don't get a win this week, I don't see it necessarily stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, the natives are restless, and in a lot of cases they're fed up, and they're tired of not only losing, but now losing at home's becoming a regular occurrence, and a streak that's not so kind to Neil Brown, 9 straight losses to ranked teams. 9 straight. So every time you've gotten up for a big game in the last 3 or so years, you've been on the losing end of that if you're a West Virginia fan. That's why they're fed up. And you had 2 opportunities back-to-back in Morgantown these last couple weeks, and you blew it. So, yeah, I think the climb has been a long, laborious process that people have, been along for the entire time, or maybe took a break and rejoined it after a certain performance. But I think more than ever since it started, there's a lot of people who have called it quits on the climb. And I don't know if it's enough to actually create change, or if Ren Baker's even thinking of that at this point, but it's getting noisy. And like I said, the fans that matter are the ones that are being loud. It's not like your outside fans that are trying to pour salt in it's like, no, it's Westford. It's Coos. It's those folks that are just fed up. And Garrett Green was not good. A couple of bad picks that led to scores. And, you just can't have that in a game of this caliber. I mean, he's 9 of 19 for 85 yards passing. Then they try to, obviously prevent Giddens from hurting them too much. And so what happens? Avery Johnson goes off. I mean, they didn't have an answer for K-State offensively. You try to take one dimension out, and they're just too talented because that quarterback is so good that he's going to hurt you, and he hurt him. So Avery Johnson definitely won the duel there between the two, and that is partially why K-State walked away with a win in Morgantown, but more of just the same kind of issues, bad quarterback play, not winning the big games. And, even all the cries for Nico Marchio, like he came in and he was fine, but he's not like the answer that's going to turn this thing around. So unfortunately for Neil Brown, that's not a lever that you just pull that magically corrects everything and makes everything sunshine and rainbows. You've already pulled that lever a couple times, and nobody's buying it anymore. So they are now 34-33 overall with Neil Brown. That is,
I had that stat yesterday. That's shocking because what you start to forget, and I know West Virginia fans haven't, Craig and Paul, is they used to be among the teams. I mean, they were dynamic, and I don't want to go too far back, but man.
well, the thing is, you have to now.
No, I agree.
The thing is, when we start talking about
Yeah.
Pat White and
Yeah.
Stedman Bailey and all these guys, like, that's a long time ago, guys. That shootout with Baylor was, 12 years ago?
2012.
So, I mean, those are some of the
first year in
memories.
the Big 12, yeah.
Those are some of the memories. Maybe a Will Greer, playing at Texas. Like, some moments like that have cropped up and occurred. They've had some good teams, but compared to where they were at one point in time, especially in the 2000s, that's a far cry from where they are right now, and that's different conferences from where they are right now. You hope that would carry over and that would be kind of the status quo, but they found themselves here of late just kind of hovering around the middle, maybe peeking their head above the water on occasion, but never fully coming to the surface and establishing themselves. And so they're dunked back underwater as of right now, and whether they can come back up for air again this season remains to be seen, but certainly they're struggling right now.
Yeah, they are. So there we are, the Big 12 North Pod with the four schools, two of them playing each other, KU and Kansas State.
God
coming up
forbid
this week. Yeah.
they don't beat Arizona, because that's at Arizona, and Arizona's a okay team.
They're
but
another team that's like
they're
Utah, Arizona, West Virginia, and maybe we could add in a couple of others that they're on the wobble. They're like teetering on what's going to happen with them if they're going to be playing some bowl game later on down the road. All right.